Well, hello, Anna. It's good to see you again for another episode of Climate Microdose.
Welcome to another ravishing episode of Climate Microdose.
Ravishing. I love
Ravishing.
that. Well,
we're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, no, so it's great. We've been doing this once every, I don't know, every other week. Or when we like to say it, whenever we feel like we have some
whenever the mood is good. Whenever we have a really interesting person that we want you guys to meet. So that's what we have in store for you today. But before we get into that, Jeremy, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are, because you're in a little bit of a different location, and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so, it's no secret. You and I, we're actually at a ultramarine in the Dominican Republic, thanks to Susie Mile, my co-founder. But every year, we host something on Necker Island called Ultramarine, and the idea is to just bring people together that will focus on how do we push the needle, not just talk about it, to protecting 30% of the world's oceans. But Virgin now has a great line of hotels, and the CEO has asked, hey, could you help share the good news. So I'm in Dallas, Texas. There's an amazing property here. I'll share basically a 50-second little clip that I prepared for you guys. But I kind of ghost this place from time to time. And if you're in Dallas and you're watching this, come ghost it with me. Have a look. Not a bad group of places to go to if you're going to go to a place, right? So anyway, so I'm here hanging out, and obviously when I come to New York, we utilize Virgin Hotels in New York for the awesome place that it is. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Virgin. It just happens to be where I'm at. But what I do want to talk about is a new art installation. Of course, here at Climate Microdose, we try to talk about the things that are actively going on in the space, and how do we kind of slowly microdose our way into solving the climate crisis. And so today, bringing on artist Steven Arcella, who I'm working very closely with. And so without further ado, I would love to just bring Steven on. Steven, how are you? You're joining us from the planetarium, I believe. Is that correct? Or the Museum of Natural History?
Very close, Museum of Natural History. Yeah. And so I'll apologize in advance that I'm sharing this incredible space with a bunch of amazing visitors. When I pulled up to the museum this morning, there were lines around the block, which I think is incredibly encouraging to see, like, all these kids interested or actually being brought to spark their interest in science and the natural world. So it was no better place to be when you invited me. I said, yeah, this is going to be perfect. So totally psyched to be here. And the reason that I was here, Jeremy, as you know, was the people at the museum were kind enough to open their doors to me and allow me to view their hard corals collection. And so I was behind the scenes and photographing and looking at some of these amazing specimens that range back to the 1800s of really pristine samples of some of these corals. And I'm using those as inspiration for the project that we'll talk about. But it was a tremendous morning, and my heart goes out, and I'm very grateful to the folks at the museum for being that generous. So it was a great beginning of the day.
It's always
That's
great to
awesome.
learn. It's always great to learn new things. But yeah, let's not leave everybody at bay here. Like, what is the project? What are you working on? Tell us
Literally at day. Let's dive in and see what this
everything.
process is.
Oh, the ocean puns are strong with these two.
Well, so Jeremy and I had met a couple of years ago, and I showed him some work, and he said to me, "We have to collaborate." And for an artist of Jeremy's stature to ask you to collaborate, like I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. I was like,
Very
absolutely.
nice of you to say.
So no, it's he's very humble, but I think to understand. Oh, that's my co-host over there. Sorry.
That's somebody crying. That is somebody crying in the background right now because you're working with their
Did
PPs.
not want to come to the museum, but
So
it's okay.
anyway, but it's the sound of the dinosaurs that are in this hall.
That's the sound of your career as you work with me.
But anyway,
Welcome to
so Jeremy was absolutely incredible and also gracious to say, "Hey, let's work together." So I started to think long and hard about what that project could look like and what that collaboration could look like. We attended an event at Oceans Week. I guess it's about a year ago, and that's where I met Harmony Martell, Dr. Harmony Martell, and we started to really talk about the plight of corals. Now, somebody that, like myself, that's been involved in environmental causes and being aware for as long as I have, I thought I knew everything. I mean, or was certainly aware of what was happening. And Harmony opened my eyes to how dire the situation really is. That being said, we both, I think the energy that Jeremy brings to a project, even in just those introductions, you're compelled to do something. It's not just a hand-wringing exercise and we're going to throw our hands up. It's like, let's roll our sleeves up and get to work and figure out what we can do. So with that, there was this inspiration that having heard about coral spawning and having heard about the flights of corals and the 2 degrees that it'll take to bleach, the bleaching events that are happening, I came up with the idea to build a better lighthouse. Now, lighthouses exist for the reasons of commerce. They don't exist for the Sunday sailor necessarily, and they don't exist for just a photo op. And in much the same way, the lighthouse that we're proposing acts as a critical part of our own survival. And in turn, obviously, the survival of corals and reefs and 25% of all ocean life going forward. So the lighthouse, the proposal for the lighthouse is we're hoping to build up to 12, but hopefully 6 that would be located around the world. These are lighthouses that would exist not necessarily exclusively at a shore point, but in some cases they would. But we're looking for maximum visibility, right? We want this beacon to really alert people to the problem. So these spires, these coral-like shapes, will be directly linked to a lighting scheme that's based off of Ocean AI's data. So that data will give us clear and very accurate indications on whether or not bleaching events may occur, what the status of these reefs are, and how endangered, what are we looking at. So we've kind of, for now, we have a rudimentary color scheme of just like a traffic light, green, yellow, and red. And if you're in red, you know that there's a serious problem. So along with that, we're thinking we want to also offer this idea of hope, right? Not just this like, wow, this is a serious problem, but that last slide that you saw would be an event that would happen once a year, and it would correspond with coral spawning. So we would hope to have like a drone light show that would also work with the sculpture and hopefully make it a point of focus and a community thing, but also extending it to the global community. And each person that comes to visit this, we'd like them to think of themselves as a node, or in other terms, a polyp, like a coral polyp. And so if they come to visit, they don't have to necessarily donate. But we're working
Not
with
the kind
some.
of polyps
We're
that you
trying.
get at your colonoscopy.
No,
the
not
same.
that kind of. Yeah,
Just in
right.
case
I
you're
know.
wondering.
We have to. We might need
Colonoscopy,
to
Jeremy.
rename that. But right. But think of themselves as a coral, and that if each one of us does a little bit, we can build it, grow as a colony, and hopefully get the with fundraising efforts, give back to people that are doing the groundwork, that are reestablishing reefs by growing coral and reseeding these reefs. So we're hoping for both. We're hoping for awareness, education, and action. And that's what we're aiming to do. So we're super enthusiastic. We just finished the deck, and we've sent it out, and we're very excited about the next steps.
Cool.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think what's so cool about this idea that you had, and we're great to be part of it. We're great to provide data to it and those kinds of things. But I think it's also great because it's so often that we walk to the beach and we order a Mai Tai or we get a margarita, whatever, and we sit there and just enjoy the view, but we forget that there's just like more life beneath that horizon, and it's a critical component to climate change. I mean, if we have any chance whatsoever in fighting climate change, the ocean is the unifier. It's the key. It's the key.
No, absolutely.
Something that really struck me is this idea of a lighthouse. In my brand strategy work, I often talk about brands being a lighthouse for people to be able to kind of magnetize their values towards a specific rallying point, whether it's solar panels, driving an electric car, wearing, a sustainable t-shirt, something that kind of signals out to the world where your values are and kind of where your heart lies and what kind of changes you want to make going forward. And we hear the phrase "be a lighthouse" so often. Hello. And it's just so cool to actually bring that into reality with these lighthouses that you're creating and utilizing AI and data and all of the kind of amazing tools that we have to actually create a real lighthouse that's going to signal what's happening in that atmosphere and how we can make changes based on the data that we're actually collecting. So it's kind of like this really interesting synergy of that lighthouse metaphor along with what's actually happening on the ground, because the lighthouses that we see, they don't necessarily environment. So bringing that factor in, that just really blows me away.
I think today Steven is the real lighthouse. I mean, he's got some people that are just like, "Hey, what's going on here? What are you working with?"
I actually think it's my friend over here.
That's what it is. Okay, all right. I was trying to give you props, man.
But it's actually fitting to be, so as I was thinking about our time this afternoon, I was like, oh, I'm going to be by the reef downstairs, by the whale. It's going to be awesome, right? Totally on brand. But it was so loud in that space that I couldn't really do that. But in all fairness, there's not a bad spot in this museum. And to that point, it's kind of fitting that I'm in this space with a bunch of fossils of creatures that are no longer here. And that's exactly what we're working to stave off. And so
hard. Oh no. Oh no.
It wasn't lost on me, but it's I think that it's we're at a critical point, obviously, and I think that people who would watch this, they probably already know. But again, to circle back to the lighthouse, it's the idea that we're creating something like Jeremy said. You go to the beach and you enjoy a drink, or you look and life is great. And I don't want to make it such a downer that people don't want to engage in this, but it's that I think when people are aware of it, and it's something that goes beyond the headline, because there's a type of attrition, as we know, with climate change, that people shut down and don't have a means. They want to help, but it's so overwhelming that it's easy to shut down. So I think the idea of awareness and education is key, but I also think like they can walk away from this with an actionable item like donating to some of these coral growers that are doing the hard work on the ground. And I've had to look at this from an artist point of view, and I think Jeremy and I have spoken about this. As an artist, you often think of the problem and you want to solve the whole problem. And really, it's not up to one person. It's not up to one person or one project. This is a small part in a greater effort. And that's what drives me to this, because there are days when I think, hey, is this too late? Like, am I just spinning my wheels? Is this to make me feel good about myself? And I honestly can say, no, it's like I'll do it to the day I die because I don't have another choice. And that's what I get up every day, and I'm grateful that I have the ability to do this. So while I'm here and while we're all here, we have to do our part to make it a better place.
So, it begs the question, great. So let's say we have these beautiful installations, which I've got, some images of them here. We've got the one, if things are all healthy, we've kind of got the green view. If we start turning orange, and then of course we've got the red, worst case scenario. But, I'm curious, like what do you hope just as you as an individual, not as an artist, but knowing that these things are out in the world, people are interacting with, what do you hope becomes the outcome of these series of installations as people start to interact with it?
I think that the big hope is that it generates dialogue, right? And if it generates awareness, then it generates dialogue. And so I've spoken to people about this project who wouldn't necessarily go to an art museum, who wouldn't necessarily, they might not even align themselves as somebody involved in environmental causes. But I think once they're aware of the scope of the problem and our reliance on corals, it's not just a pretty place to go snorkel. There's, like I mentioned earlier, 25% of all ocean species depend on corals, and it's millions of people or billions of people actually, and trillions of dollars. So I think part of the appeal is rather pragmatic. It's not just like for those of us lucky enough to have spent time underwater and been to some of these places. I mean, I spent time at the Barrier Reef, and I'm so grateful for having done that. It was like a bucket list item, and I was like lucky to go spend time there, and it was sublime. And I know that there are other people have waxed poetically much better than I could about what that is like. But if you've ever spent time underwater, it's magnificent. So I think that I would want, part of the test for me is to have people come away with some sense of reverence and some sense of awareness of what's happening. But to that, it's also that, I look at it from also a very pragmatic standpoint. I like to go fishing. I love to go down to the Keys, hire a guide, fish the flats. I usually never catch anything. The guy's very sympathetic, but it's fine. I'm having a great day. Go back, have a rum drink at one of the places, and then have a great meal and go back to the B&B. And what you have to impart on people is, if you enjoy any kind of lifestyle like that, if that's something that interests you, if that's something that you like to take your family on, or etc., that very well may end, because without the reef, there's not going to be fish. Without the fish, there's not going to be a guide. Without the guide, that local economy is going to suffer. And then people who want to go there to do things like that are just going to stop coming. And so the cascade effect of how large this problem is from even an economic standpoint, is big. And that, I think that some of the people that, again, might not align themselves with saving something for just the sake of saving it, the penny might drop, so to speak, and as they would be interested in things beyond that. So, and I try very hard that we're crossing every T and dotting every I to make sure we get it right. I'm sure we'll do our best, but that's I think also the exciting part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that showing people that climate change is actually about having a good time instead of this like negative kind of bias that's been surrounding it for a long time. It's like keeping what we love about the planet, keeping those family moments, keeping that sense of adventure alive. I think that's a really important thing to drive home, and I'm glad that it's something that you're leading with in this artistic challenge because so much of what we see is like doom and gloom, and that's what we at Climate Microdose are really trying to move away from and just showcase some aspects of joy in the climate space because we're really trying to be that beacon of like what's possible, what's happy, what's good in the world, and what's already naturally here before time runs out.
Well, it's obvious it's very easy to be despondent, and that was one of the things a conversation I had earlier today up in the corals. But it is like if you love the natural world, no matter what level, we're all involved in it in some way. Then it's upon us to do what we can to save it, and it doesn't. I think changing that narrative is really key. Right. And I think that, like I said, it's not, so there's a lot of alignment here where it's like, you don't want it's just red and, oh my God, we're wringing our hands. There might be another capacity of the sculpture to be able to say, well, our reef is in trouble, or this reef out here is in trouble, but let's see what's happening at the Great Barrier Reef or in Fiji or where have you. And so to see and compare that, one part of the world to the other, and again, it's this idea of this nodal network, if you will. But that can also offer some hope. But it's also that I think giving people a means, even if it's just small, if they want to donate $1, and we know that it's definitely going to directly to the people that are doing the work, then I think there is a sense of optimism, and you can walk away from something like feeling good about it, because I don't want to ruin anybody's vacation, but
of course not. No, and I think the community aspect of it, I think though is great. I mean, one of the things that the reason why we have the data that we have is because it's coming from multiple sources, whether it's government sources or it's private sector, or like we showed. I flashed this up earlier, but having the tools from the local folks. This is the Seymour is something that we've created within just our foundation, and the whole purpose of it was to be able to democratize ocean data and put it in the hands of those who couldn't afford it otherwise, right? Because some of these tools cost tens of thousands of dollars, and so even the systems that we're developing are several $100s. It's still way out of reach for most of the people that are in these communities that can help us achieve this data. So if they're working on this and they're telling their story through this language of data, then I think it's just a really beautiful way of kind of like putting it all together in this beautiful art piece where you just go by it and you have this feeling. It's almost the thing I think about always when someone asks me about it. I always think about the little flower. Do you remember the flower on ET? When ET was sick, the flower was just like dying, and then when he started to get better, it was like, he's okay. Like the flower. That's really how I see this. I think it's really cool that there's a way that we're at the point of time where we have the technology to tell the story, we have the technology to do something about it. The real thing that we lack more than anything is the willpower to work unitedly together for some global great. So fundamentally speaking, looking at, even if it's just one location or we've got 20 locations, we get into a situation where we've got something that's just absolutely phenomenal from a standpoint of really not just uniting people from collecting data, but collecting data from resources from around the world to achieve a common good.
100%. And you don't know what you
absolutely.
don't know, right? So like bringing that to the mind's eye of folks who are walking by the ocean and enjoying their time there, I think is key, because just like you said, Jeremy, the willpower isn't there, but the fuel behind willpower is probably awareness, right? Awareness.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Bringing those two things together might help inspire a future climate scientist or a future marine biologist, to start making changes, because we all just need to, have more clarity of what's really going on under the surface.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, without question. So, no, I think these are really great things too, because for our audience, it's like here's a way that you could contribute and be part of it. And this doesn't always have to be money, right? It's like you could simply go to an art installation like this and you could learn something, tell somebody else that collective good that happens is something that's empowering. And I think the thing I like about this is it's not catered only for those who can afford an experience, right? Because that's the worst kind of scenario.
Right.
No, absolutely. It's not, and there's absolutely no pressure or requirement to do anything. But if and I've always presented work in that fashion. Like you don't want to. In some cases, this will be didactic because we do want people to be aware of what's happening, and have the sculpture not just communicate metaphorically and symbolically, but we do need some information in that. But by all means, it's just if they walk up to it and they take that away, that's a win. That's an absolute win because otherwise we without the knowledge, without the awareness, there's no step forward.
100%. That brings me to an interesting question, and I'm glad that I have these two artists here on the line. Talking about, and you mentioned this even, talking about the idea of public art, right, as opposed to something that's a private collection. So nothing against private art, and that's all well and good and beautiful, and for you to be able to, house that collection in your home. But the idea of putting something outside for anybody to be able to walk by and see, it means something different, The public art piece, it's part of the landscape. It kind of blends into the environment. It means something deeper in kind of like a anthropological sense, almost in a way, So was it intentional that? Talk a little bit more about that. I'm so curious about your thoughts.
Well, so I was involved with, and this was a piece that I showed Jeremy that started this, was I was involved after September 11th to design a memorial for a town that's close to Manhattan. And, thinking about that, I wanted to create a space that could bring people back year after year, but also would give a place of quiet contemplation for those who lost people or those who had been through the event, or and it was a bit of a tightrope walk because, of course, I didn't want to. There's a lot of symbolism that I felt was kind of missing the point, and I wanted to kind of focus on the people and the loss of life rather than anything else that this represented. So I was thinking about this and thinking about things that people return to year after year, even if they don't know why they were created. So I looked back in history to Neolithic times and looked at henges that have a solar alignment or a lunar alignment. And so I generated this, I made this large sundial. And so on every September 11th at 8:46 a.m., that large stone in the back has an aperture in it. And it casts all the shadows align, and it casts a shadow through that archway. And it illuminates a piece of Trade Center steel that's set in the threshold of that arch. So it's a timepiece, and it's meant to specifically remember one very, very specific time and very accurately. And that it was important to me that this wasn't a gallery work, right? This was something for anyone to come up to and experience however they wanted. And I think one of the most gratifying moments for me as a designer was that someone who would never have stepped foot in a gallery or a museum was there, and he looked at it. And usually I'll go on the 10th or the 12th when it's a little quieter, there's less people there, and it's close, but it's not dead on, right? Or it's spot on accurate. It's spot on the 11th, but it's close on the 10th and the 12th. And this gentleman said to me, he said, "This is all just about how short life is." because you stop and you're quiet and you watch the shadow move and you say, is this ellipse of light actually going to mark the spot where he planned it? And it does. And then before you can even really let that in, it's already moved on. And for somebody to say that to me was so meaningful. Was that was when, as a designer, it doesn't get better than that. So I think that kind of emotional, when something resonates like that, I'm really hoping to be able to find the right form and generate the work for the Lighthouse that will do a similar thing for this, which is, rather than marking the end, an event that marked the end of something, we want to say this is a juncture, and hopefully moving forward, maybe beyond my lifetime, these will be marks of these will be monuments of really a joyful turning point, rather than something that was truly horrible. So
Wow. I mean, I'm so incredibly moved. I've been doing a lot of research about Druids and their way of life, with Stonehenge. So it really is a perfect crescendo in terms of bringing nature into the way that we live, bringing art to the public space, something like Stonehenge, and then drawing inspiration from that to memorialize such a traumatic event for the people of our country and all around the world, to be able to have a contemplative moment there, to bring nature in that way. That's amazing. So thank you for your work and thank you for sharing it with us.
my pleasure. But it is, you said Druids, it's funny, just as a little side note, the kind of if you're quiet long enough and you observe long enough, people start thinking that you really have some kind of special power, and it's really just observing the natural world. And I think a lot of these
keeping
things,
your mouth closed.
right? There's that, yeah, for sure.
It does have special powers. It really does, and that's something that we want to bring to the forefront of every single person on this planet's consciousness, is that the natural world does actually have magic within it that unfolds in the way that the blood flows through our veins. Like, it's just an amazing thing, and we just need to be still and quiet and open enough to receive that information. Even just yesterday, this is so kind of silly, but I received a bouquet of farm fresh tulips for Valentine's Day. Thank you so much. And I wanted to sit with a tulip while I worked, just because I thought it was beautiful and I didn't want to bring the whole vase in here. So I just took one out of a vase and I put it here, and I was doing my work and really enjoying its frequency and its beauty. And then I put it back in the vase, and it was kind of droopy, because I had spent some time outside of the water. And
because it was working.
Today I woke up and the one that I had taken out was risen up with all of its friends. The water, reactivated the cells, and it made it stand straight up again. And just small things like that, even taken away from nature and in my home here in Park Slope, blew me away.
Are you sure that's not because of, like, maybe it's your bad energy at your work and you have toxic environments in your work environment and it goes back to its friends?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was because it was away from water. And as you know, my work is all impact and sustainability and learning beautiful stories from brands. So I really don't think so.
Okay,
but
just making sure.
From the past, flowing through me as I try to cleanse myself and become a fully sustainable hero. But good thing we have one on the line here that we can learn from.
No, it's really great. Well, it's really awesome having you with us today, Stephen. We always make the joke that like Anna and I are here, religiously, and even if it's only our mothers watching, but we often get some really great comments from some of you that are the viewers that are either on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and so. Look, we're honored that you watched the show. We're honored to have guests like Stephen on with us. And look, we're all trying to make a difference. You've heard me say it before. I don't think that the threat is climate change or the oceans. I think it's the lack of unification. And I think conversations like this help us get to that unification.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really been an honor to be here. I'm so happy And also, you know, auspiciously, this is sort of the soft launch of the Lighthouse. This is the first we've really spoken about it publicly, you know, to any audience, and so we'll only get better from here. So, thank you.
Amazing.
How can
Well,
what can our audience do? Like, how can we support the message? Give us a little bit of like a launch pad.
I don't know, Jeremy. Do you want to field that one? That might be more.
yeah, you know, as Stephen mentioned, he worked so diligently on a deck. I suppose we could put the deck in the comments, and if any of you are interested in, you know, giving us some input on where we could put this thing, or somebody you know that could help us raise funds to make it a reality, that's also a plus. So, Stephen, are you okay with me putting the deck in the?
Yeah, maybe we'll put a slide or two in there, and then see if you know what people think, and we can go from there. Yeah.
You can just request the deck. You know, we'll post this episode,
Okay.
and if you're interested, reach out, and we'll send you
That's
the
a
deck.
better
You know,
idea. That's a better idea.
Awesome.
I know that
Great.
our members at Top Tier Impact have so many connections all around the world, and would be so happy to help start fundraising for a project like this, even just in the awareness sense of the word, you know. And I'm just blown away by just the idea of it, especially in, you know, the lighthouse of bringing our souls together to help our planet, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to keep living here.
100%.
That's it.
100%. Well, again, this has been a great episode, and I'm looking forward to the next time we have you guys watch our show, Climate Microdose. Again, we try to, you know, we don't want to burden you with all the things that are going wrong with the planet, but you know, we'll just one little solution at a time makes all the difference in the world.
Exactly that, and adding some positivity, lightness, and action into the space instead of that doom and gloom. And that's exactly what we're doing at Climate Microdose. And we're keeping it fun and fresh, right, guys?
Absolutely. Well, until
Awesome.
next time, we'll see you soon.
All
See
right,
ya,
ciao.
everybody. Thank
Great
you.
week.